move on to a native of Pittsburg, California. I've known Ruben since elementary school. We were at Marina Elementary years and years and years ago. Ruben is a graduate of the University of the Pacific. He graduated in 1987 with a BS in Public Administration. He began his career with the Wage and Hour Division at the same year as an investigator in the Los Angeles District Office. Between 1987 and 1997, he served as an investigator in Sacramento, Oakland, San Francisco, and the Fresno District Office. In February of 1997, he was promoted to Assistant District Director in the San Francisco District Office, and in February of 2007 was promoted to serve as the Western Region Director of Enforcement. In May of 2009, Ruben was promoted to assist in leading the Western Region as a Deputy Regional Administrator during the time of significant growth and change. Since 2011 in September, he has served in the role of Acting Regional Administrator. He was named just this last month as the Regional Administrator. Has always been very civic-minded and involved in the community. He was active on the Pittsburgh School Board, where he was elected in 2000, 2004, and 2008. He was a founder and played a very leadership role in the Future Leaders of America, was a Bear Branch here, and a board member for the organization. Ruben is also an active member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. When Ruben is unwinding, he does such things as coaching youth in wrestling, golfing, fishing, cooking. Ruben lives in his home here in Pittsburgh with his 3 children. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to introduce my friend, someone who has done well and we all should be proud of, your friend, Ruben Rosalez.
I hate podiums. I was looking at this podium, I go, you know, I might be okay with this podium. So I'm gonna have to, some of you can barely see me, I know, but that's okay. Thank you, and it's an honor, and I thank you, fellow, for the invitation. When I got the email from Ed Diopno, I was honored. And you know, I think that, you know, as the years have gone by, you know, in my life, you know, I always reflect on being here in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's my home, it's my roots, and I'd say Pittsburgh and West Pittsburgh, which is known as Bay Point today. But those 2 areas have been my home throughout my life. I did move around with the government, but I'm back home. I'm proud to say that I'm back home because this is where my roots are, and this is where I wanted my kids to go to school. And in fact, today with me, I have my daughter, my youngest daughter, Maya Rosales, and my mother, Lydia Rosales. More folks here that I want to acknowledge, and I'm going to do that through the course of my comments because there are points that I want to make as I go through my comments about my life, but also about what I do in the government. And some of you that are in the audience, I'm going to point you out and acknowledge you. But what I want to do also is acknowledge the fact that all of you that are here, I heard the names, and I know you all, and a lot of you, and I know we have organized labor here, we have the private sector here, we have government employees here, we have entrepreneurs here, so we have a cross-section of individuals. So I think you'll find that my comments about, when I talk about Department of Labor and some of the trends that you're going to hear about, will touch all of you. But I do want to acknowledge the fact that the People Who Care organization is here, a nonprofit investing in youth. Bernie Milata, Veronica Polk, they invest in youth. My daughter is part of their program. And investing in the community is kind of where my comments are going. And investing in the community is real important because the benefits you get back from investing in the community are always 10 times more than what you put into it. And we don't really realize that until years later you start to see the fruits of your labor. And so just kind of walking through my life, I graduated from Pittsburg High School. I was involved in Pittsburg High School. Where Federal was involved. Federal was a student leader involved. I too was a class president at Pittsburg High School for 4 years. And but that was, it was sort of a fluke because I was kind of a homeboy, going into high school. I was kind of on the edge of kind of doing stuff I shouldn't be doing. And someone kind of talked me into it, just trying it because we thought that we could run things. Be cool. These guys didn't run things. And just have I put my name and I won. So now what do you do, right? It's kind of like the dog that's chasing the car, he gets to the tire, now what? And so, but my life changed. It was a very pivotal point in my life. And and things happened for a reason. And things started happening in Pittsburgh schools at that time where there were some injustices that were happening. And so my mother dragged me to a meeting with the Mexican American Political Association. And here tonight, or this morning, Nini Huerta, Edna Huerta, Gil Reese, and Felipe Torres, they were all part of this committee that the Mexican American Political Association that was organized around helping the Latino population in Pittsburgh with political issues. And here I was, a 15-year-old, walking into this meeting to talk about what was going on in Pittsburgh schools. And they were my heroes. They actually taught me how to be involved in the community. They taught me how to take something and fix it. This is the beginning of my whole career. This is the beginning of my mentality of wanting to become educated. Because I wasn't thinking that along those lines at first. This is the beginning of understanding that I can help people. I can get into a career where I can help people and do things. And so I want to thank you, the three of you, as well as my mother, for dragging me to that meeting. But the rest is history in terms of my involvement, because I got heavily involved in the community. We got involved in political issues. We had a walkout. We walked out of school. 300 students walked out of Pittsburgh schools because we were protesting. We had a point to make. In hindsight, I probably would have handled it differently. If I remember correctly, they were listening to us. But I got forced over the years. I've learned a lot. After graduating Pittsburgh High School, I went to University of Pacific. And if any of you know the University of Pacific, it's a very prestigious university. It's a private university. It costs a lot of money to be there. My parents didn't have the money. I got grants and scholarships, and I worked to put it all together. And I didn't feel comfortable there. It wasn't Pittsburgh. It wasn't Pittsburgh. It wasn't this community that I grew up in. A lot of us don't realize the education. And I say Pittsburgh, I mean more like East County now, because we've expanded. The diversity of the East Bay has expanded. It's not just Pittsburgh anymore. You go to Antioch and find diversity. Bay Point, Brentwood, you find that diversity now. The value of that education that you get growing up in a community like this is one that you can't put a price tag on. I attribute my success with the government today to the fact that I grew up here. And not so much to where I got my degree, but that I grew up here because my ability to work with people and associate with people, understand cultures, understand languages, that education started here. It started in this community. And so when I got to University of Pacific, it was one of those, I just felt a little uncomfortable. Have you guys seen the commercial that's out right now? And it's the guy saying, "Mom, I don't want to go to college." And she's saying, "You're going to go to college." And it's back and forth. And every time the mom speaks, he has a nice house and he's a doctor. And every time he speaks, he's working in maintenance. And you guys see that commercial? And it's for the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. I had that conversation with my mother. I was going to quit. I was at the University of Pacific, and you know, times were hard at home, and I said, I can't, I got to go, I got to go, Mom, I got to help. And she goes, no, you can't, you're going to stay. And education has made the difference in my life. There's no way I would be able to do what I'm doing today without an education. So after graduating from the University of Pacific, I actually did an internship with Diamond Walnut. You guys heard of Diamond Walnut? The walnuts you put into your baked goods and all that, the packages. It's in Stockton. And I actually did an internship there, and they were being investigated by the Department of Labor at the time. And they were going through sort of an EEO audit. It was a sort of they were looking at whether they were discriminating against people. And so the interesting thing is that I got to sit next, because my internship was in the HR department. So I got to sit next to the investigator and sort of watch what they were doing. And so the investigator said, you speak Spanish? I go, yeah. He goes, we're hiring. He goes, we need investigators that speak Spanish. And he goes, we don't have any. This is in the late 80s. At the time, there were very, very few Latinos and very few Spanish speakers working in the government. And you think, the 80s, really? But it was true. It's very true. And you think that, in the 80s, the government was probably on it in terms of being progressive. I got to say, my first job was in Los Angeles. I walked into the office, and they said, okay, Ruben, this is where we keep our carbon paper. And this is where we put the staplers. We staple 2 pages together so we could type it. You can have a copy at the end of your report. We literally used carbon paper, and we had to staple it. And there was no computers at all. But computers were already out in the 80s, the late 80s, but the government didn't have them at the time, not government-wide. And so the government's actually behind in terms of technology with some of the private sector, although we've made leaps and bounds over the last 10 years. And now we're very progressive. We have a lot of technology and a lot of fancy stuff now. But I started as an investigator in Los Angeles. My first investigation was a sweatshop, a garment shop. And that was 25 years ago. I walked into downtown LA in a big high-rise, and to see people there working. And when I say the word sweatshop, I'm not using that term lightly. There are sweatshops. And the sad thing is 25 years later, there are still sweatshops. It's because there are still problems. Believe it or not, there are still people that make $2 an hour, $3 an hour at the end of the day. They're paid at a piece rate. People that are working off the clock. There's still slave labor in the United States. It saddens my heart to tell you this, but I have 10 district offices that are underneath me. And every district office has they're part of a task force called the Human Trafficking Task Force. And you might have heard a lot about human trafficking over the years. A special law was written just to combat human trafficking. And it's alive and well, believe it or not, in the United States. We have a case. We found some workers that had been working for 10 years from Laos that had been working there, and they were not paid. They were working off their debt from coming from Laos. They had a $10,000 to $20,000 debt that they had to pay off before they could be let go. We had a case where workers were locked up in a home and shuttled back and forth to a restaurant here in the Bay Area that you may have eaten at. Okay. Probably did, but that's not really close to here. But it's here in the Bay Area where workers had to get to the work by this van, and then the van would pick them up and take them back home again, but wouldn't let them leave until they paid off their debt. The individual escaped, and we were able to find out what happened. So my career with the Department of Labor began with cases just like that 25 years ago. I went into the fields with farm workers and looking at housing. There's a labor camp that I did not too far from here, where the guy was staying in a chicken coop, and that's where he had to live, and he had to pay to live there and work in the fields. So that was where my career began, and I knew when I started cases like that, this is where I want to be. This is the agency I want to work for. And as you heard, he announced the different places that I lived, the titles that I've had. Over the years, I moved up in the agency, and now as the regional administrator, I supervise the western United States, everything west of Idaho, including Alaska, Hawaii, Guam, Saipan, and American Samoa. All that's my territory. And I have to travel. I counted last 2 months, I think I slept at home 3 times in my own bed. And that's just the nature of the career that I have right now. And our agency, I have 285 folks that are underneath me in the 10 district offices. We have over 200 investigators. And in fact, today we have 2 of our investigators here with us. We have Eddie Hart Jr. You know, I said the name Eddie Hart. Yours.
Yes.
Ruben Rosalez. This is his son. Yes, that is his son. Eddie's one of our dynamic investigators. He's now located in our brand new Walnut Creek office that we established. I was trying to get an office in Pittsburgh, believe me. I was only the deputy region administrator. If I was the region administrator, I would have had an office in Pittsburgh. But I got as far as Walnut Creek. And we also have Paul Ramirez here. Paul Ramirez. And I have to tell you, when you talk about education and investing in the future, investing in youth, that's a man right there that has invested in the youth for many, many years. And when I was in high school, I had a problem with my scholarships and my grants. You guys know Cal Grant A, Cal Grant B, you guys know, you know, all the Cal Grants. Those grants that I got were going to be taken away from me at one time because I didn't fill out the right forms. My forms weren't done right. And I didn't know. I never got been to college. None of my family's been to college, so I didn't do it right. And I went to Paul, and Paul got all my grants and scholarships reinstated. Thank you, Paul. See what you did? Him and my mom have this joke about, see what you did? They blame each other. And so when I talk about the agency, the good work that we do, I also want to give you some points about what's happening in labor in terms of the dynamics of work right now. Even though I'm heavily into the enforcement, I also get to see and get to look at data and information and talk to my colleagues. And so when Ed invited me, I immediately went to one of my colleagues and said, I want to see what the latest information is on employment. What's the latest information? And this is hot off the press from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is in the Department of Labor. And actually, I was in Washington, D.C. at the time. He started feeding me this information, and I sat through a couple of workshops. And if you're thinking about, well, what's in our future in terms of work? What's in our future in terms of what I should be training for? And what you're going to see, the number one, and through all the reports, the number one industry to get into is healthcare. If you haven't already started your career, if you have youth right now, if you're thinking about a change in the healthcare industry. Now, when I say healthcare, it's a lot of things. It could be working in a pharmacy. It could be working as a home health aide. It could be working in a hospital. It could be working with the county, advising people on health services, or whatever Barajas does that here for the county. You can do a lot of things in the healthcare industry, but that's going to be the number one industry that people are going to be working in the next 10 years. These projections are made every 2 years, and they project 10 years out. And they're looking at, by 2020, that's going to be the leading industry. And why is that? A lot of the baby boomers, right? We're all getting older. We need better services. And one of the number one jobs, which is not going to be a high-paying job, they project it to be a low-paying job, is going to be home health care, where you're going to have somebody going into your home and providing services in your home and giving you help there and giving you support with your cooking and your cleaning and helping with your medicines and just maybe light nursing type stuff. That's going to be the number one job they predict in between now and 2020. So when you think about it, you think, well, wow, what's going to happen with our country? Are we making anything? Are we manufacturing anything? Well, the reality is we are. We are. And in fact, I have to say, this administration has put a lot of investment. And as you know, you guys already heard about the ARA money that we called it. We called it ARA, which is the Reinvestment Act. They turned it into the investing in the community. And when Obama passed all that money and had it invested in the community, a lot of people were expecting immediate results. Immediate results. But I can tell you right now, my agency is now investigating contracts in Arizona, in Hawaii, in Guam, Alaska, in Vegas, and as well as here in California, with monies that are being, things that are being built, hospitals are being built, bridges are being built, roads are being built. All that's happening now. It takes time. You can't just start a project. You have to do environmental impact studies. You have to do all kinds of stuff to get a project off the ground. So that investment's happening now. So believe it or not, construction is going to be on the rise. Where's Greg? Greg? Construction actually is going to go up again. The prediction that construction is going to go up again by 2020. It's going to be, right now, construction is like, if you look at all industries where people work, it's like number 9 or 10 of all industries where people work. It's going to be up to number 3. It's going to go up. It's not going to be at the levels that construction loved many years ago, in the 2006 and before, but it's going to be higher. It's going to be higher. And employment has gone up. And I know that a lot of folks are still, you're looking at the commercials and you're seeing what's going on, but employment has gone up. It's been slight, it's been moderate, but if you look at the charts, I have a chart here, if you'd like it, I'll pass this stuff out to you, but there's a chart that shows that from 2006 to 2008, 2009, our employment was going down, and now we have a trend that's gone up. We've been in the black in terms of the numbers for many, many months, for many, many quarters. When I got this printed out in DC at the time, it was for June, 80,000 jobs were created in the month of June at that time. So things have turned, things are happening. It's slow, it's steady, which means it's strong. And I think what you'll find as with the work that's going on and with the Department of Labor, you're going to see that the investment that we're making now is going to pay off later. It is. And I'm very confident in that because I get to see what's going on with the industries. Our investigators get to see what's happening with the industries. Just because they're doing labor law enforcement doesn't mean they don't see the trends. They see what's happening. Sad to say, we still have a lot of work to do. There's still a lot of low-wage workers out there. There's still a lot of investment to be done. And that's my challenge to you today. That I want to leave you with this challenge. And that investment in your community, investment in your future. It pays off. It pays off dearly. And one individual I want to point out to you is when I was involved with the Future Leaders of America program, and I got involved with the school board, and we mentioned too, I was elected. All those years on the school board. If you remember, I don't know if you got Pittsburgh folks or East County folks, you remember Pittsburgh in 99, 2000, the turmoil that was going on in our school district? Do you remember I was Mary was, you remember the turmoil and the community was split and people were angry at each other? At that time, we had a student member on the school board at that time, and he was vocal, and he wanted to see change. And I was running for school board at that time, and he was my insight to what was going on in the school, because he was on the school board, but as a student member. And he was part of my youth program, Future Leaders. And after that, he left school, he went into the Marines. And then he went to UC Irvine, and back in the Marines, went to Iraq, came back from Iraq, became a lawyer. While he was in Iraq, well actually he was a lawyer before he went to Iraq. While he was in Iraq, he was a prosecutor while he was in Iraq. Came back, now he's a lawyer in San Francisco, and he's a resident of Pittsburgh, a homeboy from Pittsburgh, Ruben Rosalez, sitting right there. Because he made it, I ran into him on BART one day, I was like, and he said, I made it a point to come home. So that's why my point to you all is investing in our communities, investing in our youth makes a difference. Hearing him say that, get emotional too. Because that's why I live for. That's what I work for. That's all these years that I worked with the youth and worked with the government. I wanted to hear somebody say, I'm going to come back home. And he did that for me. And by the way...
You did a lot more for me. And that's, I got my payback. And I always tell folks, and Fed asked me to mention this, about the people that I brought into the Department of Labor. And I tell folks that I help. You know, if I help you, all I want is for you to help somebody else. That's all I want. Because your measure of success is not how many cars, how big your house is. It's how many people you help in your life, and you help along the way. As you're climbing that ladder, you don't do it alone. They're making fun of Obama right now about him making comments about you don't do it alone, but he's right. You don't do it alone. You don't make it in life alone. As you're climbing that ladder, you got to pull people up with you. You can't do it alone. You have to have that support, and you have to invest in people. As you do whatever you do, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're in organized labor, whether you're working for a nonprofit, or you're in local state government, invest in your youth, invest in your community. It will come back to you. It will come back to you tenfold. We're beginning to experience that now. I'd like to say that as the years progress for me, and a lot of you said, Ruben, I haven't seen you in a long time, look at your gray hair. Well, some of you actually said, whoa. I think like 3 people today looked at me and said, whoa. And I knew exactly what they were talking about. And I have gray for the last couple of years. You know, my father was completely white when he was 30, so I actually consider this, I've lasted a little bit longer, and I wear it as a badge of honor in remembering my dad, you know, and I look in the mirror, I see my dad, and I yell at my kids, I hear my dad. But you know, just my final comment is to say that, you know, I really want to thank you for the opportunity to come and share with you a little bit about my career, the things that I do now. I do report directly to Washington, D.C. In fact, I'm leaving there on Monday. I spent a lot of time in D.C. I do get to see Hilda Solis, the Secretary of Labor. And again, going back to investing, you never know. I get an email from one of the youth from my program, and I didn't know where she was at. I hadn't heard from her in years. A young lady now writes speeches for the Secretary of Labor in Washington, D.C. I get an email a few months later from a young lady who is the granddaughter of Cesar Chavez, the granddaughter who helped in my program. She's working in the White House. And they're inviting me to programs. And so the thing is, I spend a lot of time, I get to meet a lot of people, I get to go a lot of places, but one thing I always remember is I'm from here. I'm from Pittsburgh, I'm from the East County, I'm from the Bay Area, and this is what I carry with me wherever I go. And it's this education, this experience, this life experience in this area that's helped me and supported me in all the successes that I've had in my life. So with that, gracias, thank you for the opportunity.
This certificate of recognition of accomplishment, great achievements to my homeboy, Ruben Rosalez. And this is on behalf of the Board of Supervisors.